assault on the part of this House, and that this is not something that should just be nodded through as part of a business motion. We should be in committee, we should consider all the implications. And the implications are enormous. The noble lady laughs, but this is a revising chamber. This is a revising chamber. What do? We take huge quantities of legislation from the other place, which has not actually been discussed or even debated, because they have a guillotine procedure. When I left the House of Commons back in 1997, we didn't have any of that. In order to get a guillotine, you had to go through numerous hoops. Now, everything is guillotined, and every one of us know in this House how legislation comes here that is in a completely unscrutinised way. And that is the purpose of this House. And if we are to have a guillotine procedure in this House, governments will absolutely love that. It's extraordinary that the opposition of all people should be proposing this.
Isn't the position even worse than that, I say to my noble friend? The noble Baroness is currently leader of the opposition. She must have considered that there is a possibility that in the next few weeks she could be leader of the House. That is if the Labour Party conceded to a general election. But, my lords, if the noble Baroness is willing to push forward a guillotine when she is in opposition, just imagine what she'd be able to do when she had the full powers of government behind her.
Yes, indeed. My noble friend makes a very important point. But of course we all know that the Labour Party are busy making speeches around the country saying that they are standing up for democracy. But the very last thing they're prepared to do is to give my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, the opportunity to have a general election where they can put their views to the people.
Suspension on the noble lord, but given that the noble Lord Strathclyde was so happy to invite me to become leader of the House on some occasion, can I put to him that I am not pushing through a guillotine anyway at all. I am asking your Lordship's House if it wishes to consider a better way, as proposed in my motion, for dealing with its business. It's for this House to decide. It's not for a government on any occasion to decide, but this House decides how to manage its business.
I know what the noble lady's doing, and we referred earlier to the debate which we had on the Cooper-Letwin bill earlier this year, when she gave an undertaking, which is now broken, that they would not take control of the business of this House, and that we would proceed as we have always proceeded, by agreement between the usual channels. And not only has she done that today, but she's added to it bringing in a guillotine procedure, which is an absolute outrage. And just to return to my point. Yeah, of course.
Having also been involved at the time, it certainly has been the breaking of an undertaking, and many of us did agree to facilitate the passage of Cooper Bowles on the basis that this would not happen again in your Lordship's House. Now, there's going to be a lot of debating. I think there is a fundamentally important amendment which is coming forward from the crossbenchers after this about the very principle of a guillotine, which we can discuss. But the purpose of as I take it, of a committee discussion, which perhaps could be confined to a short part of this, is that the person who is proposing unprecedented action in this House, which is the Leader of the Opposition, should be required to answer for that, in the same way as a Minister of the Crown is required to answer to the House. The noble lady said in her speech, and I'm putting this to my noble friend here, just for one example, I will have others later, that she said, did my noble friend hear her say, for example, that every bill from the Commons should be dealt with? Does that mean immediately? How are we going to find out these things unless we are able to have my noble friend's motion passed and have a proper committee discussion and interrogation?
Well, friend makes a really important point, and what we need to remember here is that we're dealing here with private members' legislation, because the procedures in the other place have been subverted.